Loneliness. Ardazephni knew that word. He understood it. He felt it all the time. He didn't know anyone who understood it as well as he did. Not in his current memory, anyway. 5 different planets, 5 different worlds. He'd been to 5 different, unique, varied, yet similar societies, with their own laws, languages, cultures. He'd learned all 5 worlds' languages with an ease that, if he was right, shouldn't have been possible. Not that he'd only been to 5 planets. In total, he'd landed on 700 different celestial bodies. 783 to be exact. Some were the same. Some were different. There were even a few repeats. He'd also crashed into moons, large asteroids, dwarf planets, etc. And through it all, he'd been counting. He physically couldn't not count. Arda knew he was different, based on both his memories and his knowledge. His memories of 5 planets with life showed that no one knew the things he knew, not to the extent of his knowledge anyway, and no one knew where he came from or why, or even what he was. The sentient life he found on other planets looked nothing like him. His knowledge was different. His knowledge was something he did not know how he gained or when. He just knew things. Things about a planet called Earth, and a solar system in the Milky Way galaxy, called different things by many different planets. It was already 4.5 billion years old when the Homo sapiens arrived, following several mass extinction events. Humans thrived on it for more than 300,000 years, and lived in a global economy for a little less than 2,000 years. They had a rich yet brief history with proud inventions and brilliant cultures, great thinkers. In the 34th century Common Era, perhaps one of the greatest inventions was created: perpetual motion. And then, that was the extent of his knowledge. He knew everything about biology, chemistry, astronomy, physics, psychology, mathematics, language, and more. He knew about all the discoveries, the discoverers, the mysteries, the wars, the conflicts, the peaceful times. He knew all these things. That was why he knew that he was different. Because though he knew, he couldn't remember. He tried to breathe in instinctively, only to remember he couldn't. Of course he couldn't. Arda was in space, for goodness sake. Arda was sick of the word, but he knew he should be dead. He wasn't. Instead, he was constantly drifting, floating with no sense of time, no sense of direction, relying only on his sight, which wasn't of any use most of the time anyway. All he saw was black. He couldn't even talk to himself. He couldn't move himself. He couldn't do anything. There was no purchase, and even if there ever was a stray asteroid or a comet flying close by, there was no direction that he knew led anywhere. He just drifted endlessly, eternally. No sense of being, no point in existing. Space was his closest friend. It was also his worst nightmare. He couldn't tell the difference between wake and sleep. When he started getting closer to another star system, he wasn't sure if he felt relief, tiredness, pain, or fatigue. He wasn't sure if he felt anything at all. An unprecedented amount of time later, when he started going past some of the planets instead of crashing straight into them, he realized he was going to crash into another planet with life again. His 6th. He didn't feel any surprise when he started approaching a blue planet, a large, beautiful ring at a 45-degree angle in relation to the sun, a yellow dwarf or G-type main sequence star. It was smaller than the sun of Earth, Arda could tell. Though he felt pain, he knew his eyes would be fine even if he looked at a star straight on. The only thing that surprised him were the rings. It was hard to find a planet with life that had rings, he somehow knew. Rings made most lives harder, and usually they formed into moons eventually anyway. He closed his eyes as he saw himself heading towards the planet. Ardazephni preferred not to feel the crash. So, he fell like a meteorite, his body heating up hundreds of degrees, breaking into the atmosphere, his eyes closed, blocking out the real world. He'd done this 783 times. At the 784th time, it was easy to just fall asleep as he fell into the grasp of the planet. Holy sh... Jada? Language. No one asked, Blake. But just look at the state of him. There's no way he's... Oh no, he's alive, alright. What did he do? Fall from the celestial bridge? Seems like it. You're joking. Well, we've seen weirder things. Why not a person falling from the bridge like a meteor and breaking every single bone in their body while not dying? Totally plausible, am I right? There's no way, though. Just get him inside before we all freeze. We were supposed to conserve warmth indoors tonight. Come on. I think I just broke something. Ugh, just hurry up. Arda woke up 2 days later on a couch in a room underground. Or at least that was what it seemed like. Every planet was a little different, even if some of their ideas, purpose of their furniture, and the concept of furniture itself were often the same. A living organism was perched on the couch armrest right above his head. It loomed over him. Its eyes, all sentient organisms had some form of eyes, and nearly all had with the same structure, peering down, as if intending to scare him. Arda, who hadn't seen another organism in who knew how long, was effectively startled. Unused to having sounds again, when he sat up and banged his head on its knee, the couch creaked, sending a stinging bolt of pain into his skull. Arda closed his eyes and covered his ears, not that it really helped. Every sound was vibrating loudly in his eardrums. Even gravity felt weird. Having something pressing against him, pulling him down, able to stand on something solid and actually feeling in control of where he was. His forehead started throbbing as well, and he remembered that he had just banged on the organism's knee. Wait. Arda looked to his left, where they were still perched on the armrest of the couch. Human? Alright, frankly, I wasn't expecting that kind of reaction when we found you just a pile of broken bones covered by skin and flesh. The human said, in a very distinct, crisp voice. Very disturbing, mind you. So, are you some kind of cellist? They were definitely human, though with some biological differences. Their voice was higher, vocal cords at a higher frequency than humans on Earth. Their body was visibly taller in proportion with longer arms and legs. But even so, if Arda didn't have his arsenal of knowledge on human anatomy, he wouldn't have been able to tell the difference. It was uncanny. Their language, too. It had enough English words, pronunciations, and grammar that it had to be English. Some words were different, but Arda, with his linguistic knowledge, could deduct what they meant. Overall, they were human, and yet also not. Perhaps an evolutionized human? The human shifted their position to sit on the armrest properly. Not that there was anything proper about sitting on an armrest or a couch. They held up a hand in Arda's face and snapped their fingers. Arda merely blinked. You look human, but I have no idea if you can understand what I'm saying. Aren't cellists like super smart with high-tech stuff and spaceships? Cellist. Arda assumed that was their word for alien, which was odd, since it seemed to have no correlation with the English word alien. He wondered if he was somehow on Earth. It couldn't be a coincidence that this organism was a human, or at least evolved into something almost exactly like a human, with the same language and terms as a human. Assess your surroundings first, Arda reminded himself. After 5 rounds of this, he knew it was better to get a grip on the situation and understand his settings before interacting or communicating. The room had a door that led outside, no windows, and lights hanging on the ceiling. A few scratched-up chairs and 2 rugged-looking tables set up around the couch. There were some boards and small elements that looked like game pieces. One square, squat, wooden structure with lines separating parts of it stood in one corner. Arda deduced after a few seconds that it was something similar to a drawer. Other than that, the room was depressingly barren. There were barely any colors either. The floor was just flat stone, while the walls and ceilings were tiled with gray cement. Yeesh. He tried to breathe in, and felt proper air fill his lungs, which he didn't feel the need to cough out. So, mainly oxygen, and if this really was Earth, also nitrogen, though he didn't have enough information to go off of for that. Sounds seemed to travel at the same speed on Earth, low humidity, smelled like underground Earth gravity. He assessed the human too. Long ash blonde hair in a high ponytail. He couldn't believe even the styles were somewhat the same. Gray eyes, pale skin, high cheekbones, long fingers attached to earlobes, male, as far as he could tell. He was staring at Arda intently, waiting impatiently, his eyes holding an unmistakable curious glint. Arda wasn't sure what else to assess, so he just said, in English, "I am not a cellist." The human yelped and fell over on the wrong side of the armrest, crashing into the ground. "That's why you don't sit on that part of the couch," Arda told him, standing. Clearly, he hadn't expected him to speak in English. He rubbed his ears, still getting used to hearing sounds. "I'm Ardazephni. Call me Arda. I'm not a human." The human stood up, brushing dust off his green-blue sweatshirt. A red tie was around his neck, and he wore black pants with a line of blue and green pockets on both sides, symmetrical. Arda spotted something hanging from his collar behind him, but couldn't quite see what it was. He still looked startled, and he put his fists on his hips indignantly. Even their manners were the same, Arda noted. "What do you mean that's why you don't sit on that part of the couch? I'll do what I want, thank you very much. And why did you say you were not a human, but you're not a cellist? How do you speak our language?" "You were asking if I was a cellist," Arda replied. I answered, "No, I don't have any technology or spaceships. I meant what I said about the couch, and I speak your language because it is within my arsenal of knowledge." The human stared at Arda like he'd grown 2 heads, an expression humans tended to use, even though he didn't. "I have so many questions. Hang on," the human said, holding up a finger in a pause sort of gesture. "More importantly, how are you standing, looking perfectly fine, when you had every bone in your body broken just 2 days ago?" Arda shrugged and hoped the human still had that as a body language for whatever. He seemed to understand. "What do you mean, a shrug?" "I heal fast," Arda explained. "My immune system is more efficient. I have more helper B and T cells. My blood clots at injuries quicker to stop bleeding practically before it even starts. My cells multiply at 10 times the speed of an axolotl regenerating a limb, and my body is already back in proper proportion within 24 hours. Oh, okay, I get it. You heal fast." The human shrugged as well. "Just, yeah," he sighed. Sighing was also still a thing. "But then, why do you look so much like a human?" "That I really don't know," Arda admitted. "What's your name?" He was speechless for a moment before saying, "Blake of the Northern Hemisphere. Oh, shoot. That reminds me, I was supposed to get the others if you woke up. Can you just stay right there? I can't trust you to leave this room just yet. I understand. Blake sported an expression Arda was already familiar with. One of utter confusion, exasperation, and generally with what the heck vibes. He turned and left the room, closing and locking the door with a click behind him. Arda immediately headed toward the table with the board games on top. He learned that games tended to reveal a lot about society and the people who played it, and he needed to gather information anyway. He bent down to pick up a game piece. It was a red cube with a small indentation of lines running through it. He glanced at the board, which was not so much as a board as a small 3D playing field, and a confusing crisscross of lines and platforms. Arda was just about to set the cube on a platform when the indentations lit up with blue light and it was yanked out of Arda's hands, magnetically sticking itself to the platform. He paused, then grabbed another cube, a green one, and set it on a vertical platform. It attached itself to it. He tried to take it off, and it wouldn't budge without taking the entire structure with it. Instead, he slid the cubes along the path, and quickly realized it was a maze. There was an exit where a path just ended, and after a few seconds of examination, he managed to slide both cubes to it and out. A 3D maze. Arda mused about it. Mazes tended to hone the skills of memorization, decision-making, forethought, and hand-eye coordination. There were scrapes on the paths and lines from sliding the cubes around, meaning that it was used quite often, so it wasn't just a coincidence it was there. 2 cubes might mean 2 players competing to find an exit fastest, which may also take strategizing. There were several implications this could mean. Perhaps these people of the North Hemisphere, according to Blake, were skilled cognitively, liked puzzles, and or were competitive. Technically, he knew that already, given his knowledge of human history, but he didn't want to assume without evidence. He played around with the big maze half-heartedly a bit, thinking. Then he had headed towards the drawer, but not before the door clicked open and revealed Blake with other humans behind him, filing in. There were 8 people in total, including Blake, their clothes all in muted colors and generally similar. The one thing they all had in common were bright red ties, something hanging behind them from around their necks, boots, long sleeves, and pants. Given what Arda knew, that last fact was noteworthy. Alright guys, this is Arda. I'm not a cellist, but not a human, Zephni. Blake began, gesturing grandly towards Arda. And Arda, this is a fraction of the members within the Northern Hemisphere. Now, shake hands. No one moved. As Arda had learned over 5 trips to planets with sentient life, not everyone liked physical contact on first impression. Or not. Blake seemed dejected. I'm sorry, Arda said, tone completely flat. I've learned that native sentient organisms tend not to want physical contact with an extraterrestrial being on first meetings. And the name is Ardazephni, one word. Arda for short. Blake, you're right, a female, who seemed a little younger than Blake, said. He does speak like a computer. Yes, thank you. Blake crossed his arms. And I'm always right. Not 2 days ago, technically 2 of his finger bones weren't broken, and you said he'd broken every bone. The human was what people on Earth would call an African American, with rich dark skin, dark eyes, and curly hair. She looked incredibly smug. Blake threw up his arms. Technicalities, Jada. And also, it was an exaggeration, not a statement. It's called sarcasm. Never heard of it before? Sure. Small conversations were popping up in the group, and Arda was trying to listen to all of them. Most were about him. Speculations about what he was, where he came from, how he was going to affect their living, which was odd in itself. Arda also realized that the fact that these people were apparently living together in the same building was odd, noteworthy. They weren't family, too much genetic diversity, and there was no behavior that suggested they were an adopted family. Instead, they were part of a group called the Northern Hemisphere. In any society, Arda plummeting from the sky into the planet was something that would catch public attention. If these were an underground organization, they would not have been able to smuggle him anywhere without drawing attention, especially since he had been banged up from the crash. Smuggling a random, seemingly dead body of someone they weren't sure the species of wasn't worth it. He had already determined that they were underground, which meant they were hiding from something. Then someone near the back called, "North Sphere, quiet down." A tall male pushed to the front, wearing a dark blue visor with 2 strings attached to the collar on one end, and the other connecting to the brim of the visor. Arda deduced that that was what the other members had hanging behind them. His blue eyes studied Arda. He seemed to be the leader, or at least an authoritative figure. The other members were relaxed around him, and didn't seem to mind him coming to the front, which meant respect. He also seemed to be on the senior side compared to the rest of the group, but still standing straight and walking with a confident stride. He held out a hand towards Arda. "Colonel Karatal of Sector 8, North Sphere." Arda shook it, looking up at Karatal. "Good to see you, Colonel. May I ask, what planet am I on, and what is the state of it?" Karatal smiled good-naturedly, though it seemed a little strained. I was about to explain. You see, Arda, your arrival is quite inconvenient for us. No offense." "None taken, but why?" The colonel looked to the rest of the members. "Kindlesill?" Blake, who was flipping a coin-like piece of metal, dropped it, winced as the sound rang through the room, and smiled awkwardly, trying to hide the fact that he wasn't paying attention. "Yes, Colonel?" "You're with me. The rest, go back to your regular duties." As they left, Jada sent a wink in Arda's direction. "I think you're cool, so torture Blake for me while you can." Blake made a grabbing gesture toward her with her index and middle finger and threw them towards the ground. Jada just rolled her eyes and left. Arda deduced that that was an inappropriate gesture, given Karatal's sigh. "So, what did you need me for, Colonel?" Blake asked, turning back to face the 2 of them. "I still have patrol duty later, so..." Karatal placed a large hand on Blake's shoulder, startling him. "Blake, if you're going to be a colonel yourself one day, you need to stop accepting all ordinary duties." Blake gave him a perplexed look. "But, sir, I don't want to be a colonel." He ignored him and turned to Arda. "To answer your question, Mr. Ardazephni, we are on a planet called Zeta, and as for its conditions, dire is an easy way to put it." Arda remembered the rings he saw while being pulled towards a planet that was apparently not Earth. He suddenly had a theory for all the odd factors of this planet. "How dire?" "I think it's best we show you first. Blake here is going to take us on his patrol duty above the ground, and a tour while we're at it. Now, are you fit to handle sub-zero temperatures?"